This video is sponsored by Wargames Atlantic. Greetings, my fellow necromancers of tiny plastic cadavers. Are you finding it a nightmare to unleash legions of painted shambling hordes onto your battlefields? Well, fear not. In this video, not only will I reveal a new plastic kit of zombies, but I shall teach you some methods to paint them dead quick. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. A new plastic kit of zombies, I hear you say, Peachy. Yes, Wargames Atlantic reached out. Now, if you don't know or you've not watched this channel before, I'm a big fan of looking at lots of different kits and lots of different rules. Wargames Atlantic are a firm favourite of mine because they do a nice variety of kits as well, and they're all quite interchangeable. And they reached out and they said, Peachy, we are doing a set of zombies, very generic, that can use in any game system. So they're not like modern day looking zombies that are great for Walking Dead, or maybe workshop zombies that are perfect for Warhammer. These ones can fit into any setting. So as someone who plays Silver Bayonet and Frostgrave and all the other sorts of themes of games that have got weird World War II stuff, this is perfect. However, there's an extra added bonus to this kit. They come with some historical heads in there as well, so you can fit them even more into a particular setting that you want to add them to. So for me, if I'm doing Silver Bayonet, there's some Shako heads. Granted, the heads for the Napoleonics are just French and British, but actually because they're zombies and there's lots of like battles going off, it kind of makes sense. Doesn't matter if you like play Austrians or Russians, having some random undead zombies that are British and French is irrelevant. It just themes with your games better, and that could be said with like the cowboys that they do. They've got some like ancient stuff in there, so some Romans. They've got some World War II stuff, which you could probably make into World War I really, because you've got like the Brody helmet and the Stahl helmet, and then there's some French that've got that kind of Belgic kind of style helmet. It's got a technical name, can't remember it, but I'll get off topic. It's a really good kit, very generic, just so you can use them in any setting, but then you can specify them a bit more. But what is also better, as I discovered as I was doing the builds for this video, is those heads work on any other kit as well. So maybe like the odd kit here and there you might have to file off like a neck joint or something like that, but you could get your, like I did a video a little while back where it was a Silver Bayonet video, and I showed like converting some zombies using like spare French that you've got. So let's say you did like a Silver Bayonet warband, you only need 8 figures, but you got like a sprue of, well, several sprues of like 20, 30 figures. You're like, what am I doing with the rest? Well, you can turn those into zombies. Did a video on that. However, you've got even more choices now because you've got cool arms, you've got cool heads that are themed even better. So these work really well, not just on the kits that they come with, but also elsewhere. So in this video, you'll see I use these zombie parts on actual specific World War II figures or Napoleonic figures, which is perfect. That's what you want. You want to be able to have choices. But that being said too, you can still add them to the zombies that are in this set if you don't have anything, because they're just tatty looking clothes, so it doesn't really matter. And that's really the purpose of this video, is to show you not only what you can do with the kits, but also a quick guide on how to paint them as well, so you can get them on the tabletop in quick succession. Speaking of building, let's just have a little look at the stuff that you get and what you can do with them. So let's get on and build some zombies. So as you can see, you've got quite the selection of bodies, arms and heads. Lots of like bare arms and lots of like tatty cloth arms, whole swathe of heads, historical or just generic. Pretty good. Now, I like to base my models on pennies. Just my Silver Bayonet ones have been on that for a while. It's great because you get 100 for £1, which is pretty cheap. I mean, people say get washes, but I like pennies. So yeah, I'm basing these on that. Just $1 per super glue, place the models on. Try not to deface the monarch's face. It's up to you if you don't care about that. But yeah, I'm very mindful of it. Don't want to get done for treason. And then I like to use super glue when I glue models, certainly plastic models. It's a bit of a throwback from working at workshop and doing lots of resin stuff, but there is a twofold reason for this. One, I like using super glue, and two, if I do make mistakes, so I'm not happy with a pose, I can easily snap it off. Whereas plastic glue, once it's on and it's glued and dry, it's kind of welded. So once it's on, you're kind of stuck with it. Because there's so much choice, and even with test fitting, there's so much choice with these zombies, that actually once I'm gluing them on, I might go, you know what, I don't like the pose of that arm. I might just like snap that off and reposition it. Yes, you have to scrape off some of the glue. That's fine. But that's why I use super glue. If you're always wondering, Peachy, you're always using super glue for plastic models, it's because of this reason. So I can like have a bit of a play around and go, you know what, that just needs adjusting. Or I'm going to change the head to the other angle. And yes, super glue dries brittle, but I've never had a problem with models dropping and things flying off. Certainly when they've got paint on them. But yeah, I had a lot of fun building these guys. Lots of choices, lots of arms, heads to pick from. You can just pretty much go to town doing what you want really with them. And as you can see here, I've got that Roman head. Thought I'd just stick that on, just like stick one of the historical heads onto a normal zombie. So you could do that if you want to do for your stuff, instead of like, if you don't have access to other kits, you can just stick them on there. So we're going to move into building some Napoleonics. As you can see, I've got some French and I got some riflemen. So I'm just sticking those arms on with the tatty torn sleeves, which kind of fits. Doesn't matter, they've got no cuffs on it, because you're not going to see that because it's all tatty. Just get the positions right. I want some dead riflemen for my Silver Bayonet games because it feels right. So yeah, just getting the arms in position. Now the heads do come with, so these are stovepipe shakos. You do get some Belgic ones in the set as well, but they don't have the rifle symbol. They have the normal plate on it, so you might just want to file that off. And that's what I did. Got a Frenchman here, again doing the same thing, just sticking the arms on, playing around with those, and then stick the French shako on. Again, it's just a Fusilier head, but it doesn't really matter. You can play around and do what you want. Entirely up to you how you want to position them. It does look like he's coming for a hug. So now I'm going to move on to some World War II flavoured zombies. So these are just using some of the Gentleman's War stuff. So some Afrika Korps and some 8th Army. So yeah, just playing around, getting the right kind of arms. Again, with this guy, I just wanted like the sleeved versions of the zombie arms. Kind of makes sense, really. And then just stick that style helmet on. Again, when using super glue, sometimes I use accelerant as well, which is nasty stuff, but it's really good for keeping things in place. Now the British, in some places I was starting to run low on like sleeved arms, so I did one with a sleeved arm and one with bare arm, so it's almost like the entire top's just been torn on one arm, which is quite fun. And then just stick that Brody helm on. Yeah, it feels weird doing a British zombie, I won't lie. And here we have a random knight, Norman looking dude, and some cowboys. Again, the cowboys, you could use these heads for Confederates or Iron Brigade. There's no kepis, but that's fine. But yeah, makes great cowboys, and zombie cowboys is kind of a fun kind of vibe to go with as well. So these plastics are from Great Escape Games, the Dead Man's Hand stuff. Again, super interchangeable. It's really, really good. And there we are, just a bunch of zombies from different periods, just going around the turntable. Plenty of different companies. I mean, you've got some Wargames Atlantic stuff, you've got some Perry stuff. Worth pointing out, the Perry French are a bit more upright, so they do look taller, and those shakos don't help. But most of the zombies are hunched over. So from a scale point of view, they are all 28mm. It's just that the two Perry French looked a bit taller. So there we are. That was pretty straightforward, building the zombies straight from the kit, but also using the parts on other kits as well. And that's what I love about Wargames Atlantic, is they've not only like made their own cool kit of zombies, which are pretty generic, and again, as a strength, not a weakness, but also being mindful of other kits out there and how interchangeable they are with those as well. And I think that's really, really good. So if you do want to use those heads and arms on like your Warlord bolt action plastics or your Perry plastics or whatever, you can. And that is great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to doing some painting. This is going to be a quick and dirty guide, which is perfect if you want to get lots of zombies on the tabletop quite quickly. I've done 5 when I was doing the video. There was another 5 that was already done as tests. So in total, I've done 10 here. But the 5 only took me like, what, 30 minutes to do. And that was like waiting for a little bit of paint to dry here and there, because there's some washes and there's some blood paint, and then there's the texture paint that goes on the bases. So if you did like, let's say 20 in a sitting, you would probably find it went quite quickly. So in this guide, I use one of the Colour Forge signature sprays, which is Dead Animal Bits, Pete the Wargamer's colour. It's basically Rackar Flesh, which is great. But any kind of light tone will work, whether that's white or like a bone, whatever you've got your hands on. Doesn't really matter. Green doesn't really matter. So I mean, I kept the colour palette quite simple. So it was like a light undercoat, a fleshy dry brush all over, a speed paint for all the cloth. You can add more colours if you want to. I've kept this quite simple, quite straightforward, not trying to overcomplicate it. Yes, you might argue that looks very uniform. I'm not bothered by that, because I want a horde of zombies that are just shambling across the battlefield. And if you watch things like Walking Dead, they can end up being like greens and browns and just like earthy colours anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Do what you want, but I've kept the palette and the amount of paints quite low, so keeps it simple. Right, let's paint. So the first thing I'm going to do with these zombies is I'm going to do an overbrush. I'm using Grotesque Green here. So I'm just going to get a battered old dry brush. And what I'm going to do is wipe a fair bit of paint off. So there's 2 options. You can do like a light dry brush like I'm doing here. So that's just going to give like the skin, and in some places the cloth as well. I'm mostly focusing here on the skin really, but I'm going to touch the cloth. So I'm just going to go over that and give it a bit of a greeny, rotten flesh hue. Or alternatively, if you really wanted to, you can just not wipe as much off and just go for a heavy overbrush. So let's say you sprayed your models white or like grey or something like that, and you just want to base coat them in like a rotting flesh colour. Then just just do an overbrush. That's basically where you just don't remove as much paint, basically. So you just go all over. So what I'm going to do now is pick out the cloth. I'm going to use a speed paint here for this. I'm using Gunner Camo. Any colour of your choice, you can mix and match the colours. I'm just keeping it to one. This is straight from the pot as well, but with it being a speed paint or even contrasts, if you use those, you kind of get like a nice base coat. It pulls away from the edges, gives you a bit of an edge highlight, but it just goes into those recesses really nicely as well. So yeah, just work your way around. Take your time when you're doing this, because there can be some spillages. You will get some dripping here and there, but that's okay because you've done an overbrush of that grotesque green, and you can always tidy back up after. I also did one that was a little bit more thinned down, so it was a little bit more runny, just for a different finish on the green, so it's a little bit more faded and washed out. I wasn't as keen on that one though, to be fair. So here I'm just going to do some tidying up, get some of that grotesque green. It will have a slight different finish to the skin that you dry brush, but actually once you put washes on and stuff like that, it is not noticeable at all. But it also enables you, if you've got like tears in cloth and you can see some skin exposed, you can just pick those out. Then I'm going to get some worn stone and do like a light dry brush. This is mostly, again, for the skin, to pick out some of the raised areas on the skin, but I also went over the cloth as well to make that look a bit, well, highlighted and a little bit faded in places too. Again, when we get around to doing like some washes and stuff, that will knock all that back and it will just look like really worn out cloth. This one I went a bit heavy on. I thought I'd keep it in. This is what happens when you don't remove too much paint from your dry brush and it ends up looking a bit washed out, so that's something to be mindful of. Then if you've got any metal details like the Roman helmet, just put that in metal, just using a little bit of gun metal here. Thin it down if you need to a little bit. You can use the speed paint metals as well, also an option. Then it's just a matter of covering it in a wash. Here I'm using something called Pure Grime. It just had the right kind of tone for me. You could use anything really, whether that's strong tone or some kind of flesh wash or something like that, whatever, or even just to paint thin down. Just go over your model and just apply it quite heavily, let it all pool in the recesses for you. And in some places I just get a little bit of water in my brush and then just add it to areas where it might look a bit blotchy, like the skull or like some bits of cloth. It's entirely up to you. That's just something I like to do. So next up is my favourite part, covering the model in gore. So I'm using dry blood here. You can use whatever blood paint you've got. This is really, really nice as well. I thin it down to start off with so it just runs in some of the cracks. You can stab it on, you can splat it on. I'm just going around some of the key areas where there's like holes and tears in like the skin or the cloth first of all, and then I'll work out after that, because sometimes less is more in some places, and other times, well, just cover it. It's entirely up to you. I like to wipe my finger as well. It gives it a bit of a blotchiness in places. That's just choice. It does make your fingers look a bit messy and looks like you've been murdering someone. So don't go and pick up your kid from school when you've done that. People, you get strange looks, I won't lie. But yeah, at this point I'm just covering into all those little cracks and tears, and then I can just assess after. Definitely have some dribbling down from its jaw and onto its top. That makes sense. I mean, you could argue it should be darker blood. It may be more brown because it's dry, but I like to think these have had some fresh kills, ate some brains quite recently, so that's why. And also artistic license. I think that's the other key thing. You look at that and go, yep, it's a zombie, it's been eating stuff and it looks a bit, well, dead. So that's something to bear in mind when you are doing stuff like this. If you do go down the route of being ultra realistic, sometimes it ceases to look like you want it to. So yeah, simple dead looking flesh, a simple bit of like tatty looking cloth, and then just lots of gore on the model, and you kind of, well, people will look at it and go, zombies, yeah, eating stuff covered in blood, like it. How many have you got? Hundreds. Mega. Let's play games. And then with that done, it's just a matter of just like picking out little detail here and there. I'm just going to pick out the teeth. I know they won't have fresh white teeth, but from a distance it kind of draws your eye in a little bit, and then picking out like the eyeballs and stuff. Now this guy's got a bit of exposed skull, so I thought I'd just use some of that worn stone and just pick out some bits here and there. Maybe it's all red. I just want it to look like, well, the skull. And if you do find that after you've done all this and you think your cloth just needs a little bit of punch because you've over dry brushed, this is a good time just to apply some of that paint on there now, which is what I'm doing here. So I've got my zombie painted. So what I'm going to do now is move on to basing it. This basing is super quick and super straightforward. I'm just going to use a textured paint and apply it over a couple of dry brushes, and then just use some static grass from a pot. You can use individual grass if you want to and apply it on, because I want to do loads. And this also matches in with my silver bayonet stuff as well, which is why I've used this basing. I did a video a while back, but you might not have seen that, or you might be new to the channel and you're like, how do you base these? Then it's here for your convenience. That's why I'm chucking it in now. So the first thing I'm going to do is get myself some textured paint. You can use sand if you want to paint that after. I just like using textured paint because, well, it's both at the same time really, isn't it? So I apply a couple of dollops to the base to start off with, and then I get myself like a couple of like paintbrushes of water, and then once I apply that to the base, yes, it does thin down the paint a little bit, but it's really good for getting around feet because it will just like, well, just pull around a little bit better. the option is, if you wanted to, is to bring some of that up to the feet. I'm not going to do that here. There's just a danger of it being a bit too messy, but that is an option if you wanted to. But yeah, just work your way around, get some of that texture. Really what I'm trying to do here as well is hide that lip of the little base that's on the model, on, you know, joining from the actual penny to the base. So just to try and hide some of that. And there we are, you can see all my guys lined up. Then I'm going to move on to doing some dry brushing. So what I'm going to do here is get some Tundra Taupe, just do a nice little soft dry brush over the top of the texture, and then get like a lighter colour. I've used worn stone, so makes sense. If you've got any other bones you've used, you can use that. And then it's a matter of just painting the rim of the base in the colour that you like. I have my preferences, other people have theirs. I like to do a couple of coats as well, and then just make sure it's like got a nice solid finish to it. And then you just move on to applying some grass. So I'm just going to get some super glue. I like to do that when I'm using like just clumps of static grass. You can use like tufts that you can buy from certain places, but I like to do it this way. Certainly for my silver bayonet stuff, that's how I've done it, and it kind of ties in with my other Napoleonic stuff. But yeah, just give it a little bit of a tippy tappy at the bottom of the base, and then if you find any like row bits or some tufts that are just a bit too big, just get some tweezers and just readjust them. But yeah, really straightforward. So there we are, a horde of zombies, quite quickly done. Yes, they do look a bit uniformed, but when you start putting those washes on, start getting the blood on there, you got the basing done, it just looks like a cool horde of zombies. You could mix and match some of the colours, so add a second colour for like tops and trousers, like, you know, break it up here and there in the unit if you really wanted to. I also had a model in there that had a Roman head on it, so I could have, if I wanted to, done like dirty browns or like reds for the cloth. Browns because it's quite old and aged, but I just kept it green because it was just kept it with the rest. And he's probably just like a cosplayer maybe, or some kind of town watch, or it's just a helmet. It doesn't really matter. That's the key is like when you're doing lots of zombies and you want loads, don't start getting into the nitty gritty. Oh, well, this one's a Roman, so it needs to be this colour, and this one's this. If you are doing like, you know, Napoleonic zombies, so you get like a bunch of Perry figures, or like use the Wargame Atlantic, like riflemen or whatever, then you want to theme them to match in as best as you can with the stuff that you've got. So when I did my zombies for my silver bayonet stuff, I kind of did them like really sort of washed out colours, so it wasn't like whites, blues and reds for the French. It ended up being like tones of drab grey and drab blue and almost faded red and stuff like that, because that's why I did like a dry brush over the top of it. And so you could employ the same methodology here, where you get some base colours on there but just do some dirty dry brushes over it. It just looks like they've been under the ground for a while, or they've just been covered in mud, or they're just a bit manky, which is kind of what you want for your zombies. I mean, when you get to things like World War II, I mean, the British were a bit cleaner, I suppose, but then they are in the desert zombies. They're more husks, aren't they? More dried out zombies. They're not wet zombies, they're more dried zombies. So maybe take that into account as well. What kind of temperature or location they're at would make a difference to the effect that they would have. But yeah, they're a bit cleaner. But again, using spray paints here speeds up that process. And then the German, I kind of just did him not grey. I went for like black because I want to do like some SS Paranormal Division, something made up for like weird World War II, Wolfenstein, or even Indiana Jones level kind of stuff, where you just got like these weird castles full of pseudoscience Nazis that have like reanimated the dead, maybe themselves. I don't know. Because you know, shooting zombies in the face, and especially Nazi zombies in the face, is good fun. You've also got things like the Western stuff, which are like the cowboy heads. You can use those for Dead Man's Hand. Oh, a cool zombie scenario in Dead Man's Hand would be quite good. So I just built a couple of those, and we'll probably use them in that game, maybe at some point for like a Halloween themed game. You've got a feudal, well, it's a Norman head. It looks like a Norman head. That'll work really well for Dark Age stuff. You could even stick it on like the feudal knights that like Victrix do and Wargames Atlantic do, the Baron's War ones. But you could easily just use the full face helmets because that hides the zombie face anyway, and it just looks really sinister. But yeah, thank you to Wargames Atlantic for sending them through. I really enjoyed painting these, and for me, it's just great to get some more zombies, because they did the werewolf set, which was mega. So using those in my Sharp games was good fun. But now I've got some revenants that I can add. Well, I've already done some, but more. So I can even have like lots more zombies, which is good. Because I like the odd scenario where you just have like hordes of zombies. You just got to fight them off until like daylight appears, or maybe it's just the last stand scenario until the last one's standing. Who knows? As always, a massive thank you to my supporters. A massive thank you to Wargames Atlantic for sponsoring this video and just giving me an excuse to paint some zombies. I was going to do a Halloween video anyway, so it's just worked out really well. So a big fan of that. So getting to paint some historically themed zombies has been good fun. But yes, patrons, you people are amazing. Thank you for sticking with me and being such awesome people. I'm going to go off and raise some more dead, I think. I've got nothing better to do. It's probably not a good idea to deal in the dark arts of the occult, but, you know, it's one way of getting your miniatures to paint themselves is to animate them and just let them, you know, choose their colours. That's actually a really good way of getting speed painting done. Yeah, just don't move your arm faster. Just animate them to be alive. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? I mean, I've seen some movies about toys coming alive. That ended well. That's fine. It's Halloween. Oh, speaking of which, have a good Halloween. Unless this is after Halloween, then have a good Halloween next year. And the year after. And the year after that. Or have a bad one. It's up to you. I'm not going to judge. Do what you want. Have a terrible Halloween. Throw pumpkins at children. Don't do that. Don't do that. I do not condone throwing pumpkins. It's a waste of pumpkins. It really is. Goodbye.